Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Paramita and I heartily welcome you to my channel Paramita PM. If you are new to my channel, then I would request you to go through the content of my channel, look at the videos, and if you really find those videos helpful and if they really heighten your interest, then do like it, share it, and do not forget to subscribe to my channel. And most importantly, please turn on the notification bell button so that you get notified whenever I upload any new videos on my channel. So now, without any further ado, let's get into the lecture. In this audio lecture, we shall continue discussing the significance of chapter 5 of Woolf's A Room of One's Own. So, we come to understand the narrator's point of view that she agrees because we know that she is just the spokesman. Okay, she is voicing forth Woolf's opinions, Woolf's views. So now we understand once again that main premise is mentioned that if women have financial freedom, financial independence, and a room of their own, quote unquote, then they would definitely excel in writing fiction, thereby contributing to women's literature as a whole. So now the narrator believes that apart from writing, Carmichael has much work to do. Okay, because she needs to be a good observer and she also needs to observe characters in real life, like without any kind of condescension. Okay, she has to observe the lives of the courtesan and harlot who have been stereotyped by male writers. But the narrator is also afraid that these are all controversial issues, controversial subjects. Michelle might write about them with self-consciousness. So what she has to do, that there are innumerable women whose lives go unnoticed, whose lives go unrecorded. So what Carmichael has to do, she'll have to do justice to them as she gradually discovers her own mind. She'll have to do justice to their representation, and she'll have to do that without having any grudge, without having any resentment. So what does that imply? So while writing about these women whose lives remain unrecorded, Carmichael needs to have an impartial, objective approach, and she needs to overcome her anger, her resentment against men, because only then it would enable her to have objectivity in her approach. And then she says, like the narrator says, that everyone has a blind spot about themselves. And she says that now this is not wrong on the part of any gender, whether it is men or women. Why? Because it is very natural, to be blind to your own gender and to have that blind spot. And after reading more of her novel, the narrator feels that though her work does not have any trace of anger or fear, but she is, quote unquote, no more than a clever girl. So she requires much improvement. And that's what I said, that over time, or with the passage of time, maybe in 100 years, the narrator believes if women are given financial independence and an exclusive room of their own, they would turn up to be better writers. because in Carmichael's work, she understood that it is for sure, it is certain that it is true that her work suffers from some deficiencies, but yet it also has qualities that which require praise or which are praiseworthy, and at the same time she believes that Carmichael does have that potential within her to excel as a woman writer. So here we can say that Mary Carmichael, this fictional writer, she represents a change, an enormous change in the state of writing. So we can say that women's writing is in a state of transition. Although she is an average female writer, but she's someone who has been able to pen down her work without any grudge against men, without any hatred, and she was also not aware of her gender. So without gender consciousness, without sex consciousness, she was able to write in her own way, and she also came up with her own standard feminine sentence, which feminine sentence as a model, because now as a model for, or let's say an instance for other women writers. And not only that, while talking about the subject matter, like while Chloe liked Olivia, the narrator also praises, Carmichael's treatment of the relationship between two women, Chloe and Olivia, which she found groundbreaking. Because only, according to the narrator, that female friendship is the only possible subject that she might promote, she might endorse. Because if Carmichael had written about men, then in that case the narrator would have criticized her for writing with resentment. Maybe in that case the narrator might think that Carmichael wrote about men out of anger. But since she wrote about women, she wrote about two women. Okay, so she wrote about two women. Okay, so the narrator feels that there is no anger, there is no hatred. Okay, and she was able to write without having anger or hatred within her. And as far as this female friendship is concerned, this is found by the narrator. She considers it to be a material with which only women have first-hand experience, because since it is female friendship and not male friendship. So she says that Carmichael's novel is able to compensate for that blind spot that men have in describing mankind in general. Why? Because Carmichael wrote her novel without gender consciousness. No trace of hatred, no trace of anger is found in her work. And she has not even, praised her own gender excessively, which the narrator realizes now after going over Carmichael's work that she herself has done, the narrator herself has done, but which Carmichael simply did not do in her work. So her work compensates, because men are always found to praise their own. It is said that her work compensates for that blindness that men have while they describe humanity. But as far as this, blind spot is concerned, this, let's say, this partiality is concerned, the narrator says that it is all right. It is fine. Both the sexes are different from each other, and therefore they should make an attempt to understand themselves. So each gender should try to understand the opposite gender in order to complement each other, because they are different and they suffer from their own respective inadequacies, insufficiencies. Okay, so in order to compensate, or let's say in order to complement each other, they need to understand themselves. So, while talking about Carmichael, so she says that she accepts and she admits that Carmichael is a decent writer, but for Woolf, what is more important is maybe Carmichael is a writer, but what appeared to be the most interesting thing in Carmichel's work is that she wrote without suffering from anger, without suffering from any grudge or fear against men. Although her work suffers from this lack of genius and craft, but still she has the potential. It is true that Carmichael is, as a writer, she is much inferior to Charlotte Bronte, but she does not suffer from or fear or that grudge which could have damaged the quality of her writing. So here what the narrator tries to point out, that Charlotte Bronte, although Charlotte Bronte is much superior as a writer to Carmichael, Charlotte Bronte suffered from anger or fear against her work suffered from her own anger against men, which hampered her the quality of her writing. And so the narrator believes that if women are given more and more socio-economic opportunities, then women like Carmichael or women writers like Carmichael would definitely excel as a female writer. So what basically this chapter 5 deals with is, it deals with the differences that exist between men and women. Women can see things which men cannot, because their perspective is different. They are different from each other, as I said. But in order to try to look from each other's perspective, or maybe if a woman writer, a female writer, tries to have the perspective of a man, or if a male writer tries to have the perspective of a woman, then in that case what they need to do is they need to understand each other, and each of them has their own potential, their own spark. So what they need to do, they need to develop that relationship so that they can extract that creative spark from each other. So what she means to say in this way, that they would be able to complement each other. And at the same time, what she points out is that men and women, although they have differences, they should not make them see or consider each other as opposites, as quote unquote. You come across this term, opposing phrase, opposing faction. It is true, since both the genders are different from each other, it is quite natural that they would have qualities which would be different. They would have differences. But what she means to say is that the differences that they are not problematic. But if they start looking at each other as oppositions, as opposites, okay, then that hostility should not be there. That antagonism should not be there. Differences are fine. Differences are okay. They are not at all problematic. But what might become problematic if they appear as antagonists, if they oppose each other, if they look upon each other as opposites. So because this antagonism would lead to hostility, which would again lead to their anger, their hatred, and therefore damaging the quality of their writing. Because when we read chapter 2, we found that the narrator found that when she when the narrator went through, all the books written by men, what did she find? She found that men simply wrote about women out of anger. So that should be avoided, because men are always used to seeing themselves as superior beings. They are always used to enjoying power, and they are used to seeing women being serving them, making them see themselves as superior beings. Women have been supporting them down the ages since they are used to it, so they always wrote about women out of anger. So they do not want women to come to power. They do not want women to challenge them. They do not want women to usurp their position. They want women to remain inferior all their life, so that men can have power as superior beings. And this anger, between men and women, it is because of this imbalance of power. Because on one hand, we find men are extremely powerful. They are having, powerful designations in society, which women are deprived of. So we can see that power, there is no balance in the distribution of power. So it is because of this imbalance in power that leads to this anger between men and women. And since men are used to enjoying, so they do not enjoying this powerful position of theirs, so they do not want women to challenge them in any way. And this is ultimately harmful for everyone. So with this, we come to the end of discussion of chapter 5.